The chamber of the Galactic Council was built to humble even the most powerful species in the known universe. Its vast dome shimmering with slow-moving constellations that reflected real-time star maps from 1,000 systems. Its polished floor echoing every footstep, as a reminder that no voice here was small. Yet none was absolute. Representatives from dozens of worlds had gathered in uneasy silence. Their forms varied beyond imagination. Some tall and crystalline, some flowing like living mist, others compact and armored in natural plating. All focused on a single display that hovered above the center of the hall. The image showed a human, not remarkable at first glance, average height, unassuming posture, a neutral expression, yet the data scrolling beside him had caused a disturbance unlike any seen in centuries. 5 times standard galactic gravity. And the human was walking, not struggling, not collapsing, not aided by machinery. Walking Council Speaker Reth, a towering being of layered stone-like plates, shifted slowly and addressed the assembly. This is not an error in measurement. The words resonated with quiet authority. The environment was verified across multiple instruments. 5 times the gravitational baseline accepted by all member species. A ripple of unease spread across the chamber for most civilizations. Even to time standard gravity. Required specialized adaptation or technology. 3 times was lethal to the majority. 5 times was considered impossible for any unmodified organism. Yet here was the proof. The human continued to move across the field, bending slightly to pick up a metallic crate, lifting it with visible effort, yet without injury. Then carrying it several meters before setting it down again. Council member Avara, whose form shimmered like liquid light, spoke next. This must be genetic enhancement, or artificial augmentation. Reth responded without delay, negative. Scans show baseline human physiology. No implants, no external support systems. No signs of engineered alteration beyond natural variation. The chamber grew colder, because if this was natural, then it was something far more unsettling. Another voice emerged, deeper and edged with concern. How does a species evolve such resilience? No one answered immediately. The display shifted now. It showed the same human in a different setting. A ship interior. The gravity reading fluctuated violently, rising from 1 to 3 to 5 and back again in chaotic intervals. The human braced against a wall as alarms flashed, then pushed forward through the corridor, stabilizing equipment while others around him. Non-human crew members struggled to remain conscious. The footage ended, silence returned. Reth allowed the moment to linger before speaking again. Humans originate from a world with one of the most variable and unstable environmental profiles on record. Their home planet exhibits frequent seismic activity, unpredictable weather systems, and gravitational stressors that fluctuate across terrain and atmospheric conditions. A murmur spread across the chamber. This was already known. What was not known was the implication. Reth continued. They evolved under constant pressure to adapt, endure, and recover. Their biology prioritizes resilience over specialization. Ivara responded. Many species endure hardship. That alone does not explain this level of tolerance. Reth inclined slightly correct. The explanation extends beyond biology. The display changed again. Now it showed a training facility on a human world. Rows of individuals were engaged in physical exertion, lifting, running, climbing under increasing gravitational load. Their faces showed strain, their bodies trembled, yet none stopped. A smaller figure collapsed briefly, then forced themselves back up, continuing despite visible exhaustion. The footage paused. This is voluntary, Reth said. The chamber reacted more strongly this time. Voluntary suffering was not unknown, but systematic. Repeated exposure to extreme conditions for the purpose of improvement was rare among advanced species. Humans train their bodies to exceed natural limits. Reth continued. They intentionally create environments more difficult than those required for survival. They push themselves beyond comfort, beyond safety. And in doing so, they expand what their bodies can endure. Another council member spoke, voice sharp with disbelief. They damage themselves to become stronger. Yes, and they consider this normal. Yes. The implications settled heavily over the chamber. The display shifted once more, a battlefield low visibility. Debris scattered across a fractured landscape. Gravity levels fluctuated between 3 and 5 times standard due to a damaged planetary stabilizer. Non-human forces struggled to advance. Their equipment failing, their movement slowed to near immobility. Then the humans arrived, not unaffected. But capable, they moved with determination. Slower than in normal conditions, but still functional, they carried injured allies, secured positions, and restored critical systems under pressure that should have rendered them helpless. One human, visibly strained, lifted a fallen structure, just enough for trapped individuals to escape. Another continued operating machinery, despite trembling limbs and labored breathing. The footage ended again. Silence returned. Heavier than before, Reth spoke quietly. They do not ignore pain. They endure it. They do not seek comfort. They adapt to discomfort. They do not avoid pressure. They grow under it. Ivara flickered. This suggests a psychological component. Reth nodded. Humans possess a cognitive trait that reinforces persistence. They define success not as the absence of difficulty, but as the ability to continue despite it. The chamber absorbed this slowly, because it was not just about strength, it was about mindset. Another council member leaned forward. If this is true, then their limits are not fixed. Reth met the gaze that is the concern. The display shifted again, now showing long-term data projections, graphs rising, steadily tolerance thresholds, increasing recovery times, decreasing. Adaptation rates accelerating under repeated exposure. Humans improve with stress, Reth said, and there appears to be no clear upper boundary within observed conditions. The chamber grew restless. Species with defined limits were predictable. Humans were not. Another voice spoke. Quieter but more dangerous. What happens if they encounter an environment that should destroy them? Reth answered without hesitation. They will attempt to survive, and if they succeed. Reth paused briefly. Then, that environment will no longer be considered lethal to them. The weight of that statement settled across the council because it suggested something unprecedented. A species that did not merely exist within limits but redefined them. The display returned to the original human, standing again under 5 times gravity, breathing heavily now, sweat visible. Muscles strained, yet still standing still. Conscious, still capable. The human looked up toward the camera briefly. Expression focused rather than fearful. Then he moved again. Another step. Then another, slow but steady. Reth spoke one final time. This is not an anomaly. It is a demonstration of what humans are capable of becoming. Not what they currently are at their peak. The chamber remained silent because every member understood what that meant. If humans continued to push themselves, if they continued to train, adapt, and endure, then their future capabilities could exceed current predictions by an unknown margin. Ivara broke the silence. What is your recommendation? Reth looked across the gathered representatives. Observation and caution. A pause, not containment, not interference. Another pause, but respect. The word echoed differently than expected. Not fear, not hostility. Respect, because a species that thrives under pressure is not one that can be easily controlled. Reth continued, and not one that should be underestimated. The display dimmed slowly, but the image of the human remained. In every mind, present, a being who should have been. Crushed, yet walked a species that turned adversity into strength and a future that no longer followed predictable limits. Far from the council chamber, on a distant world under a heavy sky, the same human finished his task and finally sat down. His muscles ached. His breathing was uneven, but there was a quiet satisfaction in his expression. He had done what was required. Tomorrow would be harder, and that was acceptable because to him, difficulty was not a barrier. It was simply part of the path forward, and he would keep walking it, one step at a time.